The political crisis in Rivers State has entered a new phase as the State House of Assembly has formally commenced impeachment proceedings against the governor, Nyesom Fubara, and his deputy, Ngozi Odu, citing alleged gross misconduct and constitutional breaches. Now, lawmakers, dominated by factions loyal to the former governor, Nyesom Wike, voted to ask the chief judge to constitute an investigative panel, a step seen as a fresh escalation into a bitter power struggle between the state's ruling elite. However, a Rivers High Court has issued an interim order restraining further action on the process, temporarily halting moves to set up the panel amidst court challenges filed by the governor and his deputy. Tonight on the show, we examine how this and more affects the people of Rivers State. Before we delve into the conversation, our correspondent in Rivers State, Biola Festus, prepared a package on this. Let's take a listen.
27, 2025, Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, began a tour of council areas in Rivers State on what he termed an appreciation visit to his allies for supporting his choice candidates during the 2023 general elections. While the embattled governor of Rivers State, Siminalayi Fubara, was his anointed governorship candidate at the time, Wike said he came back to inform the people that Fubara was a political mistake and told them of a change in plan.
We have made a mistake in this state. We won't kill ourselves, but we'll correct the mistake this time around.
Intriguingly, 2 weeks into Wike's tour, the State House of Assembly reconvened on January 8 ahead of the earlier scheduled date and commenced impeachment proceedings against the governor and his deputy, Ngozi Odu.
Did they report to the leadership of the party at the national? If the state cannot say anything, what about the national? Did they report before coming up with the impeachment notice? But they should know that they belong to a party. If there's any problem, any crisis, any challenge, they should first of all meet the leadership of the party.
While political watchers in the state have pinpointed Wike as the mastermind behind the renewed political hostilities, stakeholders warned that the state will bear the brunt.
It took the governor long time, years, for him to sacrifice obedience, humility to serve the former governor, which is the FCT minister today. For the FCT minister to find him worthy, trusted to hand over the mandate of Rivers to him, he expected that that humility will continue. But for obvious reasons, maybe something must have triggered the reason why this misconception and this conflict is fighting back and the rest. So I would want to advise that the governor should understand the music that his boss used to dance and play it to the boss.
Since the notice of impeachment, Governor Fubara and his deputy Ngozi Odu have both maintained silence on the matter. However, 4 lawmakers out of the 26 that supported the impeachment motion have backed out.
I therefore speak to the conscience of the governor of Rivers State and her deputy to retrace their steps and govern in line with the Constitution and keep all agreements entered with the supervision of Mr. President.
We hereby state our willingness to look at a political solution rather than an outright removal of the due. We call on our members to also consider this approach. We do not say this as a sign of weakness, but because we have forgiving hearts and as mothers.
Meanwhile, political watchers worry that as the instability lingers, the economic landscape of the state has nosedived significantly.
We should be asking people that have led us for accountability, for them to give account of stewardship, how they have led our states, not project that they have done, but just opposing the income that was generated within that time when they control the states and what is on the ground. It is not until when there is a commensurate link and equity, then you can now say that, okay, you have done very well. Not when somebody had received maybe 5 trillion or 6 trillion, and what is on ground is just some hundreds of billions.
Residents have as well called for restraints on both sides to allow actual governance in the state. The polity in Rivers State is getting to a boiling point for the third time in 3 years. During the first and second round, both fielding parties, Governor Siminalayi Fubara and members of the Rivers State House of Assembly, belonged to the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and then came the intervention of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. For this third round, which just began, both parties have moved to the All Progressives Congress, APC, the party of the president. Now the question is, will the president intervene for the third time, or will he consider this as insubordination, owing to the fact that he had intervened 2 times in the previous years? Interesting days may be ahead for Rivers politics. From Port Harcourt, for News Central, Biola Festus.
Well, still on this, Rivers-based activist and legal practitioner Nyesom Wike has criticized state lawmakers for alleged prioritizing resource control over their constitutional mandates, citing the persistent faction between Governor Fubara and Nyesom Wike. Wike urged the National Assembly to intervene and assume the state's legislative responsibilities. Take a listen.
The current impeachment notice that has been served the governor, as well as the instruction now, a letter now being served to the chief judge to set up a 7-man committee to look into the allegations against the governor, is really a sad one for our state. Because we felt that at this point, Rivers State will move beyond just coming from the crisis, coming from the state of emergency, that these men will unite, not just uniting, they will unite and they will make progress with the state. That the state will make progress from there. But what we have seen is not progress. What we have seen is a people who have said no to the development of Rivers State, but all they are interested in is the control of Rivers resources. A few days ago, we saw a group of persons who presented themselves as honorable members, who took a script and came to act on the script. Some of them could not even read, but they are members of our House of Assembly. I feel so ashamed at this point that these are the kind of persons we have as leaders. Today, they want to impeach the governor. The reason they are impeaching the governor is just simply because they feel that the governor is no longer playing ball. But for how long we will be consumed as a state by this person? How long will the House of Assembly continue to hold us to ransom? If this House of Assembly is not ready to do business of lawmaking, then the National Assembly should immediately take over the legislative business of the Rivers State House of Assembly. Because it is now obvious that the Rivers State House of Assembly is no longer interested in continuing with the legislative business of Rivers State. The National Assembly will take over the legislative business if they're not serious to handle this thing. Because the truth of the matter is that from what we have seen, these men are no longer representing the interests of the average Rivers people. Ask me, how many of the House of Assembly members have called a constituency meeting to discuss on the impeachment issues?
Well, of course, you can see crossfire there, and the politics continues to heat up. Well, joining me this evening to unpack all of this is Emmanuel Sogo, is a legal practitioner. He joins from our Abuja studio. It's great to have you, Emmanuel. Well, let me start with something that seems to be fresh news, where we understand that the Rivers State High Court restrains the Chief Judge of Rivers State, that's Justice Chibuzo Simeon Amadi, from receiving any impeachment notice from the Speaker of the Rivers State House of Assembly, the clerk, 29 Assembly members, following ex parte application filed by, Mr. Governor. But I would like that particular, ruling to come on the screen, because that would form the basis of my first question this evening. Looking at the ruling itself, it has it that the claimant or the applicant is Her Excellency Professor Mrs. Ngozi Odu. That's the deputy governor. So my question, opening this conversation right now is, does this also in any way cover the office of the governor or Mr. Governor in this? Because we know that they are the two in line, in this impeachment process. Let me start with that.
Well, from my understanding of the orders that were gotten, we need to first of all understand the fact that the office of the governor and that of the deputy governor became under a joint ticket. And for that reason, what affects one automatically affects the other, in line with the principle of the fact that they sink and swim together. So if an order of court has been gotten, how be it interim in nature, it can extend to the fact that it covers the governor as well to that extent.
That particular, of course, court ruling covers the governor to a very large extent. Because, I mean, if you are to also look at it, we know that the House further commenced the impeachment process today by citing alleged gross misconduct, constitutional breaches, as the lawmakers, voted and asked the chief judge to constitute an investigative panel. The deputy governor, through that particular court ruling, I wish that would come up, is saying that this should be restrained. So let's look at the implication of this on the process. Many are asking, we are seeing multiple rulings here coming there. So which supersedes now?
Well, at this moment, if you look at the rulings that are currently in the public domain, they are all courts of coordinate jurisdictions because they are all gotten from the High Court. So you can't necessarily say one supersedes the other. While there are conflicting rulings, the only way that these sort of issues can be settled, since all the issues are before courts of coordinate jurisdiction, is the appellate court. And I believe that the parties involved that have interest would at this moment be trying to explore other means at the appellate level. So you can't really say that one ruling supersedes the other. While you can challenge the propriety or otherwise of the rulings as presently constituted, you can't, in strict sense, say one ruling supersedes the other. They are all courts of coordinate jurisdiction. By coordinate jurisdiction, I mean they are all of the same level. So the ruling of one high court cannot supersede the other in this context. So they are all binding rulings until set aside by a court that is at the appellate level.
All right. I would also like to ask, from the point of the law, how does an impeachment process work? Particularly for someone who is of an elected, position like the governor right now. For those watching, for many Nigerians, they would like to understand, what the process itself entails. We know that there are key parties involved. The State House is pretty much, the convener of all of this. But how does it work, from the point of the law?
Well, so for that of the office of the governor, the relevant provision is Section 188 of the Constitution. So Section 188 outlines the procedure for impeachment of the governor and that of the deputy. The marginal note says removal from office. So the first procedure, the first process as outlined by Section 188 is that there has to be an allegation. So when there is an allegation, the notice of that allegation will be served on the office holder, in this case, the governor and the deputy governor. So an allegation first, then the notice of allegation will be served on the office holder within 7 days. So once that is done, the next process is for the House to actually sit again and determine whether or not they would actually investigate that particular allegation. The House has to sit and decide whether or not they will investigate that particular allegation. Now, mind you, the holder of the office has the right to actually respond to that notice of allegation that has been sent from the House of Assembly. So, but when the House sits and decides whether or not to investigate that particular allegation, it is without prejudice to whether or not the office holder decides to respond. So if the office holder decides not to respond, it does not stop the process. The House can still move forward with the process. So the House now decides whether or not to investigate the allegation. So when the House decides that, yes, we're going to investigate the allegation because there is a prima facie case as a result of the allegations that have been made, The next process is for the Speaker to actually send a request to the Chief Judge of the state in question to actually constitute a 7-man panel that do not have any political affiliation or whatever. So the prerogative of the CJ is actually to constitute a 7-man panel. So once that 7-man panel has been constituted, the next step is for the 7-man panel to actually sit and decide. And the Constitution provides that the 7-man panel has 3 months to complete that particular reference. So when the 7-man panel sits and decides, it is the 7-man panel that will decide whether or not the allegations against the office holder has been proved or not. So whatever the panel decides, and if the panel says the allegations have been proved, that particular resolution of the panel will now be sent to the Speaker, to the House of Assembly, that will now adopt that particular resolution of the House of Assembly. So whatever the law says, that whatever the panel says is final, essentially. And because the law went further to say that the decisions or proceedings of the panel cannot be challenged in a court of law. So whatever the panel says is final. So that's essentially the process. So you have allegation, notice, you have a resolution that has been passed whether or not to investigate. The next process is for the constitution of the panel by the Chief Judge. Once that has been done, then the panel sits and decides whether or not a prima facie case has been made against the office holder. If they say a prima facie case has not been made against the office holder, the matter dies there.
All right, we'll definitely come.
The impeachment process dies or lives with the office holder.
All right, we'll definitely come back to, of course, look at other angles to this, particularly from the eyes of the law. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Many thanks for joining us. It's still, of course, Politics HQ on News Central Television, and we are looking at Rivers politics at this time. We still have Emmanuel Sogo, who's a legal practitioner. He's joining from our Abuja studio. Well, joining this conversation right now is also Barrister Henry Ekine. He's a constitutional lawyer. Thank you for your time. Barrister Ekine, can you hear me?
You clearly. Can you hear me?
All right, we can of course hear you now. So let's explore. Yes, let's explore the legal crossfire that, of course, we are seeing in Rivers State, and of course the threat of an impeachment, which of the process has started, of the governor. There are several angles to it. We are beginning to see various court rulings and counter rulings. The latest being the one where, of course, we understand that a restraint order has been given. That the Rivers State High Court restrains the Chief Judge of the state from receiving any impeachment notice, from the Speaker of the Assembly and other, key players within that space. My first question to you, sir, is how much of an impact does this have on the process? And even this restraining order, the claimant happens to be the deputy governor. And many are asking, what about the governor in all of this? Is the governor, covered? So I'd like you to quickly take us through the implication of this, and maybe, just maybe, with everything that we're seeing, where does Mr. Governor stand?
Yes, apparently it's a constitutional process. The House of Assembly of any state is a creation of the Constitution. And then the office of the governor and that of the deputy governor are creations of the Constitution as well. The provision for the removal of the governor and deputy governor are extant in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So all these are legal and constitutional issues. The courts have also been established by the Constitution, and then orders of the courts are expected to be respected by all parties to any matter before the court, whether so rightly made or otherwise. So in all this, the reported restraining order as made by the High Court of Rivers State has a significant effect with the continuation, if you like, of the proceedings of the removal of the governor or the deputy governor, as the case may be. So in effect, the order of the court, as I have just received, I have just heard, is an interim order pending the determination of the substantive suit that has been brought before the court. And I imagine that certain prayers definitely would have been made before the court. But at the moment, the court considers that other steps or subsequent steps in the removal process, which at this stage is for the Honorable Chief Judge of the State to constitute the constitutional panel of 7 men with integrity. But with this intervening order of the court, it's expected that everything should stay until the substantive matter before the court is determined. Okay,
I just want to also get clarity on this, because I remember on this program just this week we had someone from the cabinet of the governor speak, and I asked a straightforward question. I asked, has the governor officially received this notice of impeachment? And he said it on this, he said no, he's not aware of it. So, Mr. Governor, let's assume, as of now, the governor is not in the know formally of this impeachment, has not been served a document. Does this process, does it still make this process valid? Can they still continue?
One fundamental principle in every judicial or quasi-judicial proceeding is the sacred principle of fair hearing. That's why the Constitution required that the notice of allegation of gross misconduct has to be served on the holder of the office. And that is not fortuitous, it's not by chance. It is to give the fundamental fair hearing, right to fair hearing, to the holder of the office. And then that evidence has to also be made available to the court in this instance, or even to the chief judge. Because the Constitution requires that when the holder of the office has been served of that notice of allegation, he has the right to make a representation. Of course, he has the right not to, but the right not to make a representation, which of course is that of the holder of the office, follows the fundamental right to fair hearing, which is the right to service. And if that proceeding, including the notice of allegation of gross misconduct, is not shown to have been served on the holder of the office, in my view, I think that's a setback, because it will impeach the proceedings itself. So the process of removal of the holder of the office, whether a governor or a deputy governor, could also be affected if there is no proof of service of the notice of allegation on that holder of the office. It is not enough for the members of the House to convene and issue the notice, but that notice has to be served on the holder of the office. And then when so served,
so you are saying, before we go on this break, you are saying that even with all of the live coverage on media platforms that the House convened and it was broadcast, and it's all over social media, in spite of all of this, if there is no formal notification, there's a stall already in the process. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. The service that is required in the Constitution is not the broadcast of the proceedings of the allegation of gross misconduct. That's a different thing. The coverage that you have and all that has been shown on social media and then in the public is the proceedings of the Rivers State House of Assembly, beginning with the allegation, the reading of the notice of allegation. That is not the service. The service has a procedure that the person holding that office has to indeed be served that proceedings or be served that allegation. And proof of that service is also important. So imagine now that the officer of the office of the governor you interviewed is saying that the governor has not been served of that proceeding or has not been served of that notice. That is fundamental. All of these processes have to be followed through to the end. The only thing that can be set aside is when the holder of the office has been served and the opportunity to make a representation That's the response to that allegation given to him, but he elects not to make a representation. It is only in that instance that I understand the other guest made a correct assertion that where the holder of the office has been served, given the opportunity to make a representation, but elects not to make a representation, the process can continue. But where that notice is not served on him, is a fundamental setback.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go on our next break. When we return, we'll shift the conversation to look at governance in Rivers State. How has all of this impacted the quality of governance in the state? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. We're still, of course, looking at the politics in Rivers State, and it's, of course, the crisis that has engulfed that space at the moment. Joining the conversation right now is Samuel Yohana, former organizing secretary of the All Progressives Congress. He joins virtually. I'm also, of course, bringing on Kudus Alalafia. There's a lawyer who is also joining the conversation virtually. Gentlemen, thank you for your time, and also to my guests that have been on, thank you. Let's shift this conversation right now from what the law or the complexities of the law around it, and let's talk about governance and its impact on the state. I'd like the graphics to come up to show how many bills since 2025 that has been passed, in the state by the State House of Assembly. So from what we have, about 3 now. Of course, from there you have it, the amount of bills passed, just very special, about 3 of them. I would just like to ask, and I'm directing my question to you, Sam Yohana. Looking at all of the political crisis that we're seeing and its impact on governance, I mean, these are members of the House who represent constituencies, but right now it looks like the agenda or the focus has shifted to how to get rid of the governor. How would you say this has impacted the quality of governance in Rivers State?
Let's first start by saying that there is no need for all this political crisis in Rivers, and governance have suffered in the last 7 months in Rivers. With the state of emergency, we thought by the time the democratic structure is put in place, they would have learned 1 or 2 lessons. But from what we're seeing now, there is no lesson learned, and they are bent on putting their personal interests before the interests of people of Rivers State. And honestly, the way they're going, at the end of the day, if care is not taken, they will finish the whole of the dispensation and there will be no quality representation from the State Assembly. I remember a few days ago, or yesterday, I saw a write-up where there's a recall that is being initiated from the state constituency of the Speaker of the House of Assembly. You see, all these are distractions as well. And you see, we all know where this drum is coming from. There's someone somewhere beating this drum. And all this has to do with personal interest. We know in politics, there is no permanent friend, no permanent enemy, only one permanent interest. And that is what is playing out now. Honestly, from the political angle, it is not good, and it won't go well for Rivers State. But I tell you, Mr. Dapo, the move they are making to impeach the governor might not see the light of the day, because other governors who had sleepless nights to make sure that Governor Nyesom Fubara cross over to APC will not allow that impeachment process to go on. They will find a way out to see that that impeachment process doesn't see the light of the day. And as it's going now, I'm sure there will be some moves at the background to see that this impeachment process is stalled. So politically, the State Assembly honestly are just there, and I think at the end of the day, they might end up being used as punching bags.
Interesting choice of words, punching bags. But let me leave you a moment and bring Kudus Alalafia into this conversation. Kudus, I would also like you to speak on how this has impacted on the quality of governance. from what we, of course, have, I mean, for the River State House of Assembly, the bill passed in 2025, just about 3 passed, by the Assembly. Part of it has to do with River State Electoral Commission bill of 2025, which, of course, they did work on, and a couple of other bills. But the question is, many of these are not even people-centric. It's more of how to, unseat the governor or play more of politics than, actual people-centric, bills or policies. So I would like you to also speak on how this has impacted the quality of governance, particularly at the State House.
Yes, thank you for having me, Dapo. I hope you can hear me right.
Yes.
Thank you very much. You see, the whole truth about River State is that a constitutional mandate which is given to the executive and the legislature with respect to the welfareism, with respect to the security of the people, of lives and properties in River State, has been abandoned, jettisoned by the occupiers of these offices to only wrestle power between themselves. So far, so good in Rivers. There is nothing tangible that we can say about governance in River State. I will keep insisting on my point on River State with respect to the modus operandi which the governor, the deputy governor, the speaker, the deputy speaker, and all members of the River State House of Assembly, their procedures in governance. For me, it is 0. If the Constitution gives you a mandate, assuming without conceding that the River State House of Assembly has even passed bills into law, let's say roughly 1,000. What is law without effectiveness? What is law without enforcement? What is law without implementation? Now, the body saddled with the responsibility to make law is so busy that if you look at the mischief, now the word mischief in law simply means the reason, the origin, the history behind the so-called various enactments which they have done. You will see that it has political undertone. It is not to the benefit of the River State indigents. It is not to the benefit of the River State citizens. It is not to the benefit of the River State residents. And look at the governor, who is the #1 person in River State. The Englishman will say, on easy lies the head.
All right.
That wears the crown. Even a senior prefect of a secondary school knows that if all other prefects under him do not work, it means he has failed. The governor is allowing himself to be distracted, and he is highly distracted on this issue. So for me, governance is 0 in River State. Thank you very much.
We'll go on our final break. When we return, we'll be taking our final remarks. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Politics HQ on News Central Television, and of course we're looking at the politics in River State and the political crisis, therein. But before we go, I'd like to go back to our Abuja studio where we have our guest for his final remarks. Thank you for staying with me. Of course, Emmanuel Sogo, legal practitioner. But I'd just like your parting words, your final comments on this matter. In all of this, from the standpoint of the law, you said quite a couple of things, and you've also highlighted that this process, to a very large extent, in spite of the several court rulings, there are still hurdles that need to be skipped. So how do you see this eventually panning out in 30 seconds?
Well, for me, I believe that all of this, the fact that there is a provision of the law that provides for all of these things, with respect to the protracted litigations that have actually ensued from all of these issues, I believe that these issues will not see the final phase of it because of the litigations that have actually ensued. So essentially, my parting words will be that the governor and every other party involved should just give peace a chance and see how they can actually govern Rivers State and allow the people of Rivers State to enjoy the dividends of democracy.
All right. I would also be directing the same question to you, to Kudus, in 30 seconds. Okay, I think we, of course, have lost connection with him. But this is the beat we will be able to take tonight. It's been a pleasure having all of you. Thank you so much. But I'm also made to understand that we should take you a Kene. They spared us some seconds. So for you, 30 seconds. How do you see this panning out in Rivers State?
Reason should prevail. Peace should prevail. The Rivers State House of Assembly should consider the primary responsibility they have, which is lawmaking. And that aspect of their primary responsibility largely, by what you have shown even on your TV, on this program, is a failure for a house, the 10th Assembly, to pride itself, maybe at the end of their tenure, to say they amended, not even really passing those bills as new. The reference bills there on your screen, with respect to the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission, was an amendment. The reference to the Rivers State Local Government Law was an amendment. So all of these were also primarily done to serve certain interest, because at the time it was about the Rivers State Local Government elections. So we had that battle, and after that we are coming on issues of appropriation law, and then spending outside of the appropriation law is generally referred to as the budget, as grounds for removal of a governor, as if we cannot have other ways to resolving those differences if they exist at all. But of course they do not exist, because there is a budget in Rivers State, and if at all there's any controversy, the National Assembly passed a budget that the president assented to, and let us even assume that there is no budget. The governor has the constitutional right to continue to authorize withdrawal from the revenue account for 6 months. So where do we have this crisis? I think wisdom should prevail.
All right, thank you.
The best interest of people and peace should prevail.
All right, thank you. I'd like to say a big thank you to all of my guests this evening. Thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. Well, this, of course, is the beat time will permit. In case you missed out, you can catch up on our YouTube platform. That's at News Central TV. You can also choose to follow us on social media. The handle is there on your screen. You can choose to follow me personally at Dakpo Adeboye. Until I come your way again, up next is Tonight.